I've got some very interesting business news to bring you, but we're just going to break away from that very momentarily. Stay with us. There's some breaking political news. Our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, is in Aberdeen, where the Prime Minister has been this afternoon. Tamara, what can you tell us?
Well, Ian, the Prime Minister has left Aberdeen in a bit of a hurry because we understand that in just over an hour's time, he's going to be making some remarks standing in Downing Street. Now, this will be the first time he's given a speech in the street since he became Prime Minister 16 months ago. Before I set hairs running, we are told this is not the announcement of a general election, but the Prime Minister's remarks will touch on recent events, including in Parliament last week, and the need to protect our democratic processes. So the day in which George Galloway is confirmed as returning to Parliament as the MP for Rochdale, in which Rishi Sunak has called a divisive campaign which may inflame community tensions, the Prime Minister will be speaking in Downing Street at 5:40 this evening about the need to protect democracy. Now, we know that last week when we saw the Gaza debate in Parliament and the Speaker making the decision to let a vote go ahead that other parties opposed, Rishi Sunak made the point, he said, that legitimate protests, pro-Palestine protests, which we've seen every week, he says have been hijacked by extremists, and he says our democracy cannot and must not bend to the threat of violence and intimidation. We know that's what the Prime Minister said last week. Today, it appears he has more announcements on that, and we will hear from him in a little over an hour's time.
Jolly good. Thanks, Tamara. Some breaking business news to bring you now. And in the last half hour, it has been reported that the aircraft manufacturer Boeing is in talks to buy Spirit Aerosystems. That's the jet fuselage supplier at the centre of concerns over the safety of Boeing's 737 MAX jets. The Wall Street Journal says that Spirit has hired bankers to explore strategic options and has had preliminary discussions with Boeing, which owned the business, before spinning it off into a separate company in 2005. Well, Spirit makes 737 fuselages and other airframe components, but was blamed when the door plug on a jet operated by Alaska Airlines blew out in January. Shares of Spirit have risen by 13% on that report. Now, the High Court has ruled that the Levelling Up Housing and Communities Secretary, Michael Gove, was wrong to block plans by Marks and Spencer to develop and redevelop and demolish its store near Marble Arch in London's West End. Mr Gove blocked the proposals in July last year on the grounds that they failed to support the transaction to a low-carbon future and did not encourage the reuse of existing resources. But the High Court today found for M&S on 5 of the 6 counts it brought forward and said Mr Gove's decision was unlawful. Well, joining me now to talk about this is James Souter. He's partner at the law firm Charles Russell Speechlys. James, welcome to you. How much of an embarrassment is this for Michael Gove?
It's really going to be quite difficult for him. It's been a very high-profile decision. It's been causing considerable concern in the development and investment community in London. Michael Gove really went out on a bit of a limb, refusing planning permission for this development, which had been granted a couple of years earlier by Westminster. There was an inquiry. The inspector recommended approval, and Michael Gove went against that. And the High Court today, as you say, has found that decision was unlawful, and it leaves him to really think about, how he's going to approach it second time around.
Yes, it really is quite a damning verdict. I mean, the judge has said Michael Gove not applied the policy, but rewrote it.
Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the comments. We've been working through the decision today, as I'm sure you can imagine, and misinterpreted, rewrote and misapplied. I mean, it is quite a powerful decision. So I think that is going to give considerable pause for thought.
Does it follow, James, that M&S can now plough ahead with this development? Presumably it's going to have to resubmit its planning application.
No, that's a good question, actually. I mean, it's been an incredibly long process to get to this point. And where this leaves us, actually, is Michael Gove either appeals the decision of the High Court today and challenges their findings, and if he doesn't do that, then he is left to reconsider. He may convene a further inquiry, or he may remake his decision, attempting to deal with the grounds on which the High Court found that the previous one was unlawful.
Now, you touched on a very interesting point just now. You said this has implications for all other planning applications. I mean, what are those?
I mean, I think the development community in London was rocked by Gove's decision last July, and a lot of applications are on hold, and a lot of developers, really waiting to see the outcome of this one, to see whether it sort of had the precedent that Gove had set was going to apply across the board. And I think they'll find great comfort in this decision. But I mean, I think, as we've said, important to say that Gove has another go. So it's not a question that M&S have won. They've won a significant victory this morning in the court, but it doesn't mean that they have planning permission yet to go ahead with their proposed development. But the development community in London will certainly be buoyed and watching very closely to see what happens next.
James, for those who don't follow these things as closely as you do, how typical is it for a Secretary of State to come in and block an application of this kind when the local authority, in this case Westminster, has given it the green light?
It's not all that common. And I think really, as I said earlier, so it's quite unusual. It's generally significant schemes, high-profile developments. But I think really the striking factor here, as I said, is that Westminster granted permission. The inquiry that was convened in order to review that recommended approval, and Michael Gove went against it. So that was probably the most striking part, is that against the evidence that had been presented and the recommendations of the inspector in the inquiry, Michael Gove made a different decision.
James, good to talk to you this afternoon. It's a fascinating topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
Some other business news stories for you now. And house prices rose on a year-on-year basis last month for the first time in more than a year, according to Nationwide Building Society. The UK's second largest mortgage lender said house prices in February are up 0.7% from January. On a year-on-year basis, prices were up 1.2% on February last year, which Nationwide said was the first year-on-year growth recorded since January 2023. It said house prices were now around 3% below the all-time highs recorded in the summer of 2022. Well, earlier I spoke to Johan Svanstrom. He's chief executive of Rightmove, the UK's biggest property portal.
The sentiment towards end of 23 and beginning of 24, just like you quoted here from Nationwide, has been much more positive. So listings are up 18%, sales agreed are up 16%, and demand is coming back. There's clearly a pent-up demand from both buyers and sellers from some of the hesitations of last year due to the higher financing costs.
Ryanair has confirmed that it will be putting on fewer flights during the peak summer months this year. Europe's biggest airline said this was because Boeing would be delivering just 40 of the 57 planned 737 MAX aircraft due to be delivered before the end of June. It said it had already implemented schedule cuts as a result at airports including Dublin, Milan Malpensa, Warsaw Modlin and 4 Portuguese airports. Michael O'Leary, the Ryanair chief executive, said he was very disappointed, but added that Boeing continues to have Ryanair's wholehearted support. Elon Musk, the owner of Tesla and X, is suing the artificial intelligence company OpenAI, accusing the firm of prioritising profit over developing AI for the public good. Mr Musk is bringing the suit against OpenAI, which he co-founded, and its chief executive, Sam Altman, for breaching the contract by reneging on its pledge to develop AI carefully and make the tech widely available. The company behind the groundbreaking generative AI chatbot ChatGPT was originally founded as a not-for-profit company, but it's grown to have commercial interests, which has caused tension between board members and founders. Now, there are less than 8 weeks to go before Manchester's new state-of-the-art indoor arena opens its doors to the public, with the comedian Peter Kay the opening act. Co-op Live, close to Manchester City's Etihad Stadium in the east of the city, will be the UK's largest live entertainment arena with a capacity of 23,500. The venue has cost £365 million to build, and it's a joint venture between City Football Club and Oakview Group. I've been speaking with Tim Lewicker. He's the chief executive of Oakview Group, and asked him, given that there are other big live venues in Manchester, including the A Arena, what made him think the city needed another?
I used to run AEG that manages the other arena. And what always amazed me is that arena was built for the Commonwealth Games, 30 years old, £52 million. And yet Manchester for many years was one of the 2 or 3 best music markets in the world. And in fact, that arena for 2 or 3 years was the #1 selling ticket for music events arena in the world. So we looked at it and said, Manchester and the UK deserve a world-class arena. And we knew if we built something that was spectacular, it would do extremely well. But still, gutsy, because it's the most expensive arena ever built anywhere outside of North America. And it's all privately financed. So there were a few nights I'd wake up in the middle of the night and ask that question.
I mean, the sum I've seen reported is £365 million. Is that roughly correct?
So myself, our company, OVG, and City Football Group are partners. And we each put in the £365 million with Harry Styles, who's also a partner of ours.
What's the equity investment that Harry Styles has put up?
Harry's very smart, a lot less than ours.
but he is an equity shareholder.
He is, and actually he's been very involved in the design of the back of house, the design of the artist compound. He was very involved because we've spent more money on acoustics in this building than any arena ever built in the UK. So Harry was really excited about the intimacy of the experience of 23,500 people being right on the stage. And it's almost as if the artist could touch that last row. So it was interesting to see his perspective of the things that he thought were really important to artists and their fans.
And how did he get involved in the first place?
He's been a part of our family for a while, and my partner, Irving Azoff, and Jeffrey Azoff actually manage Harry. And so we've been part of Harry's life to watch this unbelievable career and what he's been able to accomplish. And he's actually from up there. In fact, I think he was like a bagger at Co-op early on when he was a kid. So he's come full circle. He could probably buy Co-op now.
Now, you mentioned the price of the investment just now. How quickly do you anticipate that paying for itself? What sort of return on capital are you looking for ultimately?
So for us, amazingly, we now own and operate about 7 arenas around the world. That's going to double in the next few years as we continue to expand, especially in places like Europe and the UK. This is our second or third best rate of return that we're going to have on our investment. We're private, so I like being private. But at the same time, I will tell you, it is a good, healthy rate of return. It will be one of the more successful and one of the more profitable arenas. We've done extremely well. All 27 of our suites are sold out. All of our sponsorship is essentially sold out. So this ability to take the burden off the public sector, not ask for £1 from the public sector or from the city of Manchester, very unique because that's not how most stadiums and arenas get built. The fact that we spent more money on this than anyone's ever spent on an arena outside of North America, and you and I could have a nice conversation and I'm smiling about rate of return, that's a good thing.
This is not the only project you've got underway. You've got another arena under construction in Lagos right now, I understand.
We actually have an arena just outside of Toronto, Hamilton, that's a renovation, and then a brand new arena in Lagos that we just announced and broke ground on a week ago. We have probably another half dozen projects we're about to announce, and there's speculation, which is accurate. We're looking and have been looking for a while at West London and building a world-class arena in West London.
Now, what about the Co-op? How long do they have naming rights?
Well, hopefully forever, but for at least 20 years, and they have the ability of kind of always taking a look at the relationship every 10 years to make sure it's doing what they thought. But we created a really unique opportunity for them and their members. They have roughly 3 million members that have pre-sale rights. So what's happening now is every artist allows Co-op a certain period of time, and when you're a Co-op member, you get the chance to do pre-sale before it goes on sale to the public. That's probably why this arena right now is selling equal to or actually outselling some of the dates that go on at the same time at O2 in London. So they've been ecstatic. Their members are very happy. And it's also one of the reasons we'll get 180 events in that building the first year.
Now, this is far from your only investment here in the UK. Last year, you bought a catering business called Rhubarb Hospitality Collection. How's that been trading since you got the keys?
Fantastic. So we have about 1,000 employees now in the UK between the arena. Our international offices are headquartered in London, and now we have Rhubarb, and we bought a company earlier called Bovington's. So I'm very bullish on the UK. Since my time when I built the O2 to now with what we're doing at OVG, this is my favorite city in the world. This is my favorite country in the world. This is just a huge opportunity for us.
And he's so excited about that. He was telling me after the interview that he's actually going to be living in Manchester for 2 months over the next couple of months. Still to come here on Business Live, we will be having a look at how the markets did this Friday afternoon. Stay with us.
It was a bit of a Goldilocks moment for us. So we've been studying the marlins for a number of years now, interested in how they hunt. So marlins are a really fascinating fish in that they're usually solitary, but every year off the coast of Mexico, they flock there towards the sardines, and they basically hunt in packs in the same way that sort of lions or wolves do it. But the thing that's super interesting about marlins is they're usually by themselves. So there's no central coordination or alpha or anything like that. So we've been interested in how they hunt, and for a while we've been trying to work out how they coordinate those hunts. And it wasn't until we sort of had this perfect Goldilocks conditions of these flat seas, no wind, that we really saw this brightening, lighting up as they go into attack. And what we think is happening is that they're actually either signaling to their mates to back off, because obviously they've got a big weapon on their face, they don't want to damage it. But also it could just be sort of their excitement that they're going into hunt. So it was a pretty exciting thing to see. So we've known that they've been able to light up for years. You know, ask any fisherman, they'll be able to tell you that pretty quickly. But we always thought it was a bit of an excitement response, so almost like getting flushed or blushing in humans, getting excited and just getting brighter. But what we think is it's pretty clear that it's targeted towards actually hunting, which is pretty cool. So we film off Baja on the Pacific side of the Baja coast off Mexico. So, and that's a really perfect place for them. The seas are calm, it's beautiful and clear, and we get these huge aggregations of them. So that's really the perfect place to see it. It's what's known as the sardine run of Mexico. So, and thankfully we haven't seen any sharks there. So it's a little bit safer, I guess, to jump in the water as opposed to some other places around the world. So it's quite nice over there.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Well, on the first trading session of the new month, European stocks have had a largely positive afternoon, although gains to the upside were limited after figures suggesting that year-on-year inflation in the Eurozone fell from 2.8% in January to 2.6% last month, which was slightly higher than expected. As you can see, all the main continental European indices ending in positive territory. Talking points this afternoon include Volkswagen. That's down 4% in Frankfurt after it warned of a sales slowdown this year. Well, here in London, the FTSE 100 has also caught the mood, finishing up more than 2/3 of 1% higher in a broad-based rally. In percentage terms, Pearson is the leading blue-chip gainer, the educational publishing giant. Its results came in ahead of expectations, paving the way for an increased share buyback. To the downside, Ocado has fallen by some 5.5%. Oh, that's Pearson, up 5.5%. Ocado off nearly 7% at the close there. Yesterday's results carried with them reports that it may sue its joint venture partner, Marks and Spencer, in a disputed payment. Ocado falling nearly 7% on that news. Elsewhere on the FTSE, the industrial equipment supplier IMA, that's off 2/5 of 1% on its results today. Outside the FTSE 100, ITV has risen by 14%. It's selling its stake in BritBox International to the BBC for £255 million, and it will be returning the proceeds to shareholders. That's the reason why that one's up so much. Meanwhile, Close Brothers, the merchant bank, is ahead by nearly 10.5%. There have been some signs that speculators who've taken short positions in that company in recent weeks have been closing out. Over on Wall Street, all of the main stock indices have opened to the upside amid lingering hopes of an interest rate cut in June. Talking points this afternoon include Dell. The shares have surged by 26% to an all-time high. That follows an upbeat trading statement. On the foreign exchange markets, all about strength in the euro this afternoon. Pound is up by 1/5 of 1% against the dollar. It's off against the single currency. Likewise, the euro is up by 1/4 of 1% against the dollar. Meanwhile, ahead of this weekend's OPEC Plus meeting, the oil price is on course for its third weekly gain in 4. Barrel of Brent crude currently changing hands at $84.19 a barrel. That's up 2.75% on the session. A lot of speculation. OPEC is going to maintain its production cuts for longer. Well, joining me this afternoon is Myron Jobson, Senior Personal Finance Analyst at Interactive Investor. Myron, welcome to you. I mean, corporate news today, a lot of it about ITV is very interesting.
Yeah, certainly. So this sale of its share of BritBox is quite significant. So BBC Studios are buying it in a £255 million deal. And it's clear to see that ITV thinks that profitability is more directed. Well, probably it'll be more profitable if they focus on ITVX, which is their advertiser-funded streaming service. And so that's quite interesting news. And also, what you mentioned earlier, there will be a share buyback, which has sent shares surging by 14%, as you quite rightly said. I think the thing to just point out here is you have Netflix, you have Prime Video, for example, they all have massive market shares. And for challengers like ITV, it's about competing and also being profitable. And clearly they didn't see that with BritBox.
Yeah, we should stress this is BritBox International. The BritBox UK is unaffected by this, and that remains a JV between ITV and the BBC. Now, another big corporate story out today. Pearson, world's biggest educational publisher. Markets seem to quite like these results.
Yeah, you know, Pearson has undergone significant transformation over years from like a textbook-based learning education provider to more online-based. And so their profits have risen quite significantly year on year, just over I think it's over 140 million increase year on year. So that's quite significant. And one thing it says is that it's looking to invest more in AI, which seems to be the future. We spoke last week about NVIDIA and how it's been increased because of the hype towards AI. And Pearson's looking to kind of capture that too.
Absolutely. Now, away from the stock market, we had some interesting news from the housing market today, nationwide, highlighting the first year-on-year increase in house prices since January last year. What are the wider ramifications, do you think, for this, for the economy?
Well, it's quite interesting. It's just the sense of house prices have been will come down recently because of mortgage rates were simply too high. A lot of people were putting off buying a house because they simply couldn't afford the monthly cost of mortgage. So in terms of wider economy, there seems to be a sense of optimism in terms of where interest rates are heading, and a buoyant housing market in terms of more people participating could prop up GDP, could prop up actual consumption, which is what the economy needs, especially after entering a recession, a slight recession at the end of last year.
I mean, there's almost a case for saying it actually probably does the government more good for a few interest rate cuts rather than it does for the Chancellor to be cutting taxes next week.
Debatable.
But, I mean, Rightmove, we heard from there today. I mean, very upbeat, I felt.
Yeah, again, all of this is because of improved sentiments where interest rates are heading. If interest rates are lower, that means mortgage rates are going to come lower, which means more activity in the housing market. And as I said, it might be good for the UK economy more broadly. OK,
Myron, got to leave it there. Appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it from me. Back on Monday, of course, at 11:30. Hope very much to see you then. In the meantime, do stay tuned. Coming up next, it's Jonathan Samuels with the News Hour, which, of course, will include that statement from the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, at 20 to 6 outside Downing Street. There's the scene right now. No sign of the lectern as yet. I'm sure we'll be putting in an appearance very shortly. Before I go, a very happy St David's Day to our Welsh viewers. I should have said it in Welsh, but you'd only laugh at me. Have a good weekend. Cheerio.